Okay, so this one is about the nature of sustained progress. I've done one about the nature of progress, and talking about sustained progress as well, but there's something really profound I want to share with you about sustained progress. And it's very closely linked to abundance. But there's something really surprising about the source of the energy that perpetuates a self-regulating system, or in fact anything of atomic size, of atomic mass. So sustained progress. What's the difference between sustained progress and just progress? So progress, the nature of progress is that it's like a virus. It seeks to progress at all costs, even at the cost of the host. Now, ideally, the host doesn't die for the virus, but the virus will take over the host because the process of invading the host, even at its own cost, even at its own death, creates the potential for more progress. And so that progress is relentless. It doesn't care about sustainability. It's just relentless progress at any cost. And sustained progress means that the progress is relentless, but it's eternal, meaning that the progress is always emerges out of a surplus of what is essential to maintain the status quo. So a self-regulating perpetual system, whether it's an organization or software or a machine, it's always sustaining its own progress from a surplus. So, if that's a business, it means, in the beginning, and so, I want to make something really clear about perpetual systems, is that they have to receive a source of energy first. There is, the prototypes that are working today are not, they're not their own source of energy. They receive energy from outside first. And that energy has to be given freely. And so it's important because lots of people are seeking this, this magical state of a perpetual energy system that initiates its own source of energy and then perpetuates it. But my approach is that something has to gift itself freely to that system in order for it to receive everything that it needs to sustain itself and so survive, and then begin generating a surplus. So it's cumulative. You enable it to perpetuate itself, to sustain itself, but it's accumulating all the time, and then its own progress comes from its own surplus. And interestingly enough, I'm not going to go too deeply into it now, but a truly perpetual system that self-regulates and progresses in a sustained way, it's creating more and more and more energy, more and more and more progress. It's expanding in the same way that the universe does. Is sacrificing the progress that it made in the last cycle, let's call it. Every component sacrifices the progress it made in the cycle before, and the cumulative progress then enables that to double. And so this is where we begin to see the introduction of the Fibonacci sequence in context of sustained progress. And, if you look at the Fibonacci, some people look at Fibonacci and they say, well, you take whatever's there now and you times it by 1.6 or thereabouts, and you keep timesing everything by 1.6. Well, you can also look at it a different way. And if you go into a spreadsheet and you begin the Fibonacci sequence with the number 1, and then you go up, the first cell has number 1 in it, the second cell to the right is number 1, then you add the last 2 together. 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 1 is 3, 3 plus 2 is 5. And so you go forward, and then you take what was behind and then carry that forward, you see. So the pattern is, and this is true for all of life, is that the progress that is made now is sacrificed so that it can become even more. And in truth, this is what's really happening in the Fibonacci sequence. It's like two-step, I take a step forward, then I take a step back, then I take 2 steps forward, then I take 2 steps back, then I take 5 steps forward. You see, this is the nature of progress, and this is the nature of a sustained system. And so, as human beings, once we understand that we are, the nature of our reality exists within a self-regulating perpetual system, the intention is to align with that. It's to align with that so that, your energy, what you're investing, what you are, choosing to sacrifice or to give to the system, is done willingly. Otherwise, it has to self-regulate. It has to self-correct. And, lots of people view this in different ways. A spiritual person would call it karma. Some people would say, you have to give in order to receive. And, the reality is that the system that we are in now, it is already receiving from you. It is already siphoning your energy. Your energy is going into that system because you are a toral field that's both that radiates and magnetizes. And so it's happening regardless. But, obviously we're all of us are able to manipulate and influence the environment around us in order to give or receive more or whatever it may be. But understanding your individual components within the system, and you have free will, there's, the major issue for this system is resistance. And, if you're resistant to receiving, if you're resistant to giving, if you're incapable of surrender, if you are, just resistant in general, that becomes an issue for the system, because if energy can't flow freely to and from each component, then it's always having to self-regulate and self-correct. It's built to do this, and so it can cope with it. Nonetheless, it can be an uncomfortable experience for a human being when the environment around them is continually self-correcting because of the resistance within each component. And, it's no coincidence that for people that are working on prototypes for systems like this, this is the challenge for them as well, is the resistance of each individual component. If it's an electronic device, then it's the resistance of that individual component that's preventing energy from flowing to it. And so there's always a loss. It's the impedance of the energy flowing through that component that is creating a loss of energy. And so ideally what you want is each individual component to be capable of receiving energy from the rest of the system with zero resistance. That's the holy grail. and to then give of itself, sacrifice of itself. And, that's 1/64th of what it receives is freely given to the unified whole of that device. And this is what enables it to perpetuate, is that it is constantly receiving and giving. But, a key component of any device like this is that it's a surplus that is sponsoring all of the progress that is made. And in the beginning, that surplus must come from another source, So if it's a free energy device, then it has to receive energy from the sun first in order to create its own surplus, and then sustain its progress from there. So all the fundamentals of all systems like this is that it's always the surplus that enables progress. And that's what sustained progress is. It's always coming from a surplus, never from a deficit, because that's when you slip into survival. There's a threat to the well-being or to the capability and capacity of that device sustaining itself. So that's enough of an introduction, but what I want to actually share with you is as a human being, understanding that you are a self-regulating perpetual system, and obviously you want to be in a state of non-resistance, and but you also want to get yourself into a state where you are consciously giving of yourself to the system. And, lots of us are, I'll give you an example here of a metaphor. If you're someone who is, feels like they have a lack of security, they're fearful of the world, they don't feel safe, they fear lack. They don't feel like you're in a state of abundance, that's for sure. What's the solution? Well, it's to create a surplus, and, the most simple way to do that is every single thing that you earn, put 10% of it in your savings account. Every time you receive something, you willingly sacrifice 10% of that. And when I say sacrifice, you still keep it in your bank account, but it's in your savings account and you never touch it for the rest of your life. That's how you create security, because there's a surplus and you can see it. Very, very simple. Very, very simple. And, some people may argue, oh, but I needed that money. And, well, the buffer and the knowing that there's a surplus is the key to feeling safe and the key to feeling like you're in a state of abundance, because you've always got money there that you can see, that you can draw on, but you just never will. This is the reality of, I know quite a few spiritual people listen to this podcast. And so it's important to understand abundance isn't about, like there's an infinite amount of everything that I've ever wanted. Now, it's not like that. There's a surplus. There's a surplus that is providing the source of energy to create progress perpetually. And so what you want to do is you want to align with that, and you want to set up your life so that there's a surplus for you, and that all of the progress you want to make in your life comes from that surplus. And so that you're never putting everything that you need in order to survive and keep breathing and keep moving and keep food in your belly and a roof over your head, that the money that you need to do that is never sacrificed to sponsor progress. That's all progress comes from the surplus. And So what I want to talk about now is the unseen surplus that all human beings have. And it's the key that unlocks everything in your life that you want, and will put you into a state of receiving. However, it's very challenging to get yourself into the state of receptivity, because the unseen surplus available to every human being is contained within the emotion of grief. The emotion of grief. And most human beings are extraordinarily resistant to grief. And so I want to help you understand this, because once you do understand it, and once you allow yourself to reconcile your life, to start at the beginning when you're a child, and go through your life and all the decisions that you made, and understand the cost of those choices. Every time you're making a choice, you're sacrificing another choice. Or, you may be in a scenario where you've got 5 different choices available to you, and you can only choose one. So you're sacrificing 4 of those choices. And, regret can be explained or described as wishing we had made a different decision when we were aware of the specific decisions that were available to us in that time. Regret is wishing we had made another decision. Grief is the feeling of the lost potential of having not taken those specific choices. It's the same with, I've spoken about this in quite a few other podcasts, but when someone that you love dies, what you're grieving for is the lost potential of how you could have appreciated them while they were here. If they were still here, I would have had this holiday with them. I would have, created a business with them. I would have this, that, the other. The grief is for the lost potential. And so, throughout your entire life, you've made, I wonder how many millions, trillions of choices consciously that have changed the course of your life. Every single one of them is a sacrifice, and some of them will have been major and will hold significant grief. For example, I think one of the main ones would be the decision to have a child. The sacrifice in order to have that child is utterly immense. It's utterly immense. Now, many people say that there's no such thing as sacrifice. It's not true. Sacrifice is happening in every single moment. As I'm recording this podcast, I sacrificed finishing off cleaning the house, actually. That was a very willing sacrifice. But I could be cleaning the house now. So once I've finished this podcast episode, I'll have to go and clean the house. Whereas if I didn't record this episode, the house will be clean by the time I'm finished. These are sacrifices. Now, am I going to mourn the lost potential of having had a clean house an hour earlier than what it is going to be now? Not really. Not really. Maybe a minor tinge. But it's sacrifice and it's willingly made. And, in the case of, let's say you get pregnant by accident, have a child, that will feel like you've been forced to sacrifice yourself. And that's an extremely, you're responsible for it, of course. It's, you have to take responsibility for it. No one did it to you, although you may feel that someone did. Nonetheless, it feels like you were forced to sacrifice. And it may feel like it was the child's fault. And so this is obviously a breeding ground for resentment and many other things. But, if let's continue this metaphor as an example, because the grief that if you haven't felt it yet, the grief, there'll be grief within you. And if you're someone that suffers from chronic pain, or if you have vision impairment, I'd strongly recommend exploring when you had your first child. And just ask yourself, if I had not had this child, what would I have done instead? And just allow yourself to imagine that life. Allow yourself to imagine that life. I could have this and I could have that. And if I was doing this, it means that I could have done this. And once I was doing that, I would have been able to do that. And I would have had more money and I would have done this and I could have traveled and just let the grief come. Let the grief come. Just let it purge you and cleanse you, and understand that contained within that grief and what the life that you're imagining, it's everything that is available to you now. It's everything that is available to you now. So if you are someone that struggles to, understand what you want, I never know what I want. Some people ask you, what do you want? What do you want to do with your life? What do you want to achieve in the next 10 years? What experiences do you want to have in the next 10 years? Oh, I don't know. Make more money, get a better job, and go on a holiday. Well, no, that's not what you actually want. It's much, much deeper than that. Allow yourself to grieve by imagining the life that was sacrificed. And I would recommend actually starting as a child. Try and identify the moments where you began sacrificing what you actually really want in order to fit in order to avoid conflict, in order to be seen as good, in order to feel like you belong. There are millions of decisions you've made where you've self-sacrificed in order to please someone else, or in order to avoid fear, negate fear. And allow yourself to mourn. Well, what would have happened if I'd stood up for myself in this situation? What would have happened if I, rather than conforming and going to university, I had continued to plow myself into my passion project? What would have happened if I'd said yes to that opportunity? And imagine all those scenarios. And once you've done a life, once you've, evaluated your whole life, and you can imagine the life that you could have had, that holds the key to what you want now. That holds the key to what you want now. And this is where the unseen surplus is. Your grief for the lost opportunities of your entire life. And, obviously the older you are in years, the greater the grief will be. But it holds the key to what you want now and what you can cram into. And cram is not the right word, but fill your life with now. If you're someone who lost one of your parents in a tragic accident when you're a teenager, and you imagine the life that you could have had with that parent if they were still alive. They would have seen me this. They would have been at my wedding. I would have loved to have gone into business with them, or would have loved to have spent more time with them, or da-da-da. that's showing you the potential that you have now to create with, maybe a child that you have now. And you'll feel immense levels of satisfaction and fulfillment from admitting these things to yourself and sharing them with people. Yes, you'll feel vulnerable, but your life will feel fulfilled in ways that you never believed possible. You've been searching for fulfillment, through money or material possessions or accumulated wealth. But fulfillment comes from experience, comes from the satisfaction of new experiences. And that's the whole reason that the system that we live in is perpetual and eternal, so that we can continue to become more and experience more, receive more, radiate more, understand more, continually to dissolve more and more resistance to everything that we want to receive, and let go of all of our resistance to giving what we want to give inherently. If you're one of those people that feels like everything around you is trying to take from you, people are always trying to take from you. And the reason that you're experiencing that is because you're resistant to giving what it is that you have to give. You'll only give it upon conditions. You'll only give it if people do this first, or say this first, or show you this first, or you have to feel safe first. Well, if you continue to do that in your life, all you will experience is people taking from you. And what's really happening is, the system that you live in, the universe, is trying to crack you open so that you'll give to the system freely. And therefore become more capable of receiving. So grief is the magic, it's the magic emotion. It's the key that unlocks everything, the key to your fulfillment in your life. And once you let go of your resistance to grief itself, it's almost like if you imagine a cone, an ice cream cone. At the very, very bottom of that cone, sometimes there's a bit of chocolate. If it's a trumpet, or there's a tiny bit of chocolate at the bottom, right at the bottom of the cone. You can imagine that that's where the grief is. The grief is the chocolate. It's sitting there and it's blocking energy from flowing right at the bottom of that cone. And with grief, it's like you can also imagine at the bottom of that cone, the chocolate is the 0 point. So within a self-regulating perpetual system, the 0 point is the surplus. And that surplus contained within the 0 point is what's freely given from the system itself, from all of the components. They're all giving of themselves a certain percentage, 1.5625% of each component is being freely given, and it accumulates in the 0 point. So if you measure the toral field of anything, it's deliberately and purposefully imperfect. What's being radiated, radiated and magnetized, there is a difference of 1/64th. And that 1/64th is what is given from the system to the 0 point. And that 0 point is the source of all progress. It feeds all progress, comes from the 0 point. And that 0 point is, we describe it as infinite potential, and it is infinite potential. And it is totally abundant in context of the system as a whole. But it is finite. And so if, let's say, you, whatever the value of the energy contained within that, it's dormant potential, but it is finite. And so if you radiated 10 times more than what the system has the capacity to receive, you'll have an implosion and the whole thing will be destroyed. So you can't say that, it's total abundance and just progress like a virus. Just like a virus, it'll eventually kill all the hosts and everything dies. And so, if you want to create relentless progress, what you want to do is figure out a way for the virus to spread in a way where it is symbiotic with the host, and the host is thriving because of it. If the virus is enabling the host to become even more, to thrive even more, then the virus can continue spreading. And this is, a common source of conflict I have with myself and my team in business, where, they just want to make everything go viral. And, here's a product that, what some of you will know, I've built a social e-commerce platform, and, people can get a free website. And so my team want to just put a free website in the hands of everyone. So, make it go viral. And if you consider each individual user as a host, they're receiving this website. But if they receive that website and it does nothing, if it's not generating revenue, or if they don't know how to use it properly, then the website really just dies. It becomes stagnant and does nothing. And we've just, we've got people, you could have millions of people using a free website, using up our data, using up our bandwidth, using up our storage, but they're not thriving because they've got this website. They don't know how to use it properly. Yeah, it's free and all the rest of it, but it's free, so I'll just have it anyway. And what I want to do, very, very challenging to explain in this context, but what I want to do is I want to enable people to thrive through utilizing the tools on the platform. And I want our success to be paired to their success. And so I want to enable the spread of the virus being the website. So I do want it to go viral, but I want it to go viral on a specific host who is capable of thriving because of the nature of that website and the ecosystem around them that's enabling them to derive the utility. So it can still go viral, but it's only a specific kind of host that it's going to go viral on. Now, you can imagine me having this conversation with my marketing team, even my investors. They're like, huh? What? So, that is probably my biggest challenge at the moment, is having an interface between myself and the people in the business that makes sense to them. And so back to grief. Grief is the 0 point. Grief is the unseen surplus of energy that you have to create relentless progress now in the direction of what you desire, of what you actually want. And it's your resistance to experiencing grief and acknowledging it that is probably the last block between you receiving everything that you need in order to create sustained progress. Grief is the 0 point. And the life that you imagine for yourself holds the key to what you can begin creating now to progress. To progress. You know, I had dreams of, when I was young, being a professional tennis player. And, you know, I had injuries, had a major back problem, was told I was going to be in a wheelchair before I was 30. And, you know, I've had to grieve for the loss of that dream. And so how do I utilize that now? You know, I gave up on it a long time ago. And how do I utilize that now? Well, it's to prioritize playing tennis. So I want to play tennis now. Do I have an injury? No. Am I fit enough yet? No. So how can I become fit enough? I can begin walking. Can I walk 5,000 steps today? No. So I walk until I can walk 5,000 steps. Then I do 7,000. Then I do 10,000. Am I ready to play tennis yet? Not quite. Keep walking. It evolves into jogging. Am I fit enough yet? Yes. And so this is the progress. You know, I want to play tennis. I grieve for the loss of that thing, but I'm not giving of myself to that thing. So right now I'm sacrificing my energy for tennis. That's what I'm willingly prepared to give of myself to. And it'll be the same for you. You know, if you lost a parent, then you have the opportunity to create the connection that you wanted as a child with your own kids, or in some other way with other people. If you wish you had spent more time with friends, then you have the opportunity to reconnect and rekindle relationships now, and to nurture those relationships now, and to sacrifice yourself willingly now in order for your relationships to be fruitful. Understanding that if you feel as though you don't have the space for these things, for those relationships right now, what is it that you're not allowing or prepared to sacrifice in order to have it? Or what is it that you're not prepared to or willing to let go of, or to allow to die, so that this new aspect of your reality can be reborn? So sacrifice, people say that sacrifice isn't real. It's absolutely real. It's absolutely real. But what you want to do is be conscious of what you want to sacrifice, and become aware of what you're not willing to sacrifice in order to give of yourself to the things that really matter to you. I learned this the really hard way. And I mean the really hard way. I gave all of myself to one project for many years, and I sacrificed everything. Friends, family, health, my body, hobbies, everything else. I let it consume me wholly until I wasn't, none of my thoughts were even about anything other than this project. And in my mind, my mindset was telling me that that was what I wanted. This will succeed at all costs. Progress at all costs. Progress, progress, progress. Won't stop. You know, fight, 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 fight. And it wasn't until I finally began to assemble a team of people around me to take control of the things that I was in control of, and that I began to let go of everything I was doing, that I began to grieve for the life that I could have had if I'd chosen to give of myself to many of the other things that I care about. And believe me, the grief has been, monumental. I've never experienced grief like I've been experiencing since I've withdrawn myself from that project and surrendered it to people who are not only experts in those things, far more capable than me, but I've allowed myself to begin to give of myself to some of those other things that I sacrificed and have been grieving for. You know, one of the really surprising ones was walking in the bush. For the first time in many years, I allowed myself to go for a walk in the bush, and it was utter euphoria. I mean, total euphoria. I just went for a walk in the bush, tears streaming down my face, feeling like I'd given myself the biggest gift you could ever receive. And I've been going every day since. Doing my 10,000 steps a day, getting ready to play tennis again. And the ability to play tennis again is actually just around the corner. So you can see I've been reborn by allowing the old version of myself to die, and by letting go of the things that were preventing me from giving of myself to things that I really care about. I've been able to grieve for that old version of myself. I've been able to grieve for the loss of the life that I could have had if I hadn't sacrificed everything for one project. And I'm allowing that grief to guide me towards the life that I'm capable of truly appreciating right now. Just a simple walk in the bush. The appreciation is, I can't even describe how it feels. I can't even describe how loving it feels to gift that to myself. And when I start playing tennis again, I'm thinking about it every day. That first serve that I hit, the first time I hit a ball over the net and it comes back and I begin swinging the racket and feeling my body moving around and realizing that I'm giving myself the gift of playing tennis. And everything that led to that, the first walk in the bush, the first 1,000 steps, on to 5,000 steps, then to 10,000, and have led to this moment now where I'm now playing tennis again. And there are many, many more experiences that I'm intending to have, rekindling friendships, beginning to date again, taking care of my body, and it's a wonderful feeling, and my grief has guided me towards all of these things, towards all of the fulfillment that I want now. And your grief, once you allow it to be purged and you begin sacrificing things that are taking you away from what you actually want, your life will change. You'll be reborn. But the letting go is hard. It's very, very hard. But your grief is the 0 point, because it's the sacrifice that's been made. And so you have an unseen surplus that is just sitting there waiting for you to utilize it to create progress sustained progress in the direction of what you actually want. So I think I'll leave it there. That's it for the nature of sustained progress. Apologies if all the stuff about, perpetual systems is a bit much, but, I'm wanting to bring this full circle now. And I want people to understand that, my true obsession, is self-regulating perpetual systems, and understanding that human beings are a self-regulating perpetual system. Every atom in your body is, every molecule, every cell, organism, every organ in your body as a whole. All of these fall into this category. But what I do in my life is I'm bringing this into, the software that I'm developing. I'm utilizing this to solve problems within blockchain technology. I'm bringing it into, the software platform that we've developed. I'm bringing it into the way that we incubate and launch a business. I'm bringing it into how we manage a portfolio of autonomous organizations that are creating their own progress out of their own surplus. And then I'm utilizing the surplus of that portfolio as a whole to spawn another portfolio, you see? So it's inherent in absolutely everything that I do. And, there are even people developing prototypes of machines that are a power source, a source of energy. There's another system where there's a grid of these that are chained together and it can power a village. And, if my belief is that if we can align with the inherent nature of the system that we're a part of, and we can consciously and willingly give of ourselves to that system, rather than trying to hold it back or, make our decisions conditional upon what someone else does. If we just willingly give of ourselves to it. In religion, they would call it tithing. If we willingly and consciously sacrifice and give of ourselves to it, then it will not have to self-regulate in order to crack us open until we choose to give and therefore receive. The enemy of the system is someone who is incapable of receiving, and the other enemy of it is someone who is unwilling or unable to make progress in the direction of what their soul desires. And your grief, everything that you are yet to grieve for, from the life that you wish you could have had, holds the key to the progress that you can make now. And the passion within that grief, the inspiration within it, will give you the impetus to act. This is where it's contained. So use your grief to spawn your passion projects. And yeah, that's it. So my recommendation, begin with a life evaluation. Start when you're as young as possible. See if you can identify where you began to make decisions that weren't in your own best interest, and begin to imagine what you would have said, done instead, and what the outcome of that would have been. And until you have a picture. And then ask yourself, how can I bring this into my life now? How can I use this as a source of inspiration to create progress in the direction of that now. And you're away. Okay, I'll leave it there. That is the nature of sustained progress. Cheers for now.